Podcast. Are we live? Let me know when we're. Count us down, okay?
All right. All right. Three, two, one. We're live.
Welcome back, everyone, to the podcast of no particular name.
Hello. We're here. We're filming. We're
We
live.
have a
We're
we have a
talking.
wonderful show for you guys tonight. We're gonna talk about new Lord of the Rings movies, AI, how we measure intelligence, cats versus dogs,
Yep. Just going
and
down the
sexual
list.
attraction to airplanes.
Yeah. I mean,
And also, we're gonna read
priorities.
several breaking news headlines from the most reliable source on planet Earth, The Onion.
You'll love to hear it.
So anyway,
All
let's get
right.
started. What can you tell us about new Lord of the Rings movies?
So I've been seeing uh, some talk, some little discussion on the internet that what is it? I don't know what company it's like Warner Brothers or something. They're thinking about making. I've heard that they're gonna make Lord of the Rings. I don't even know if they're sequels, just new Lord of the Rings movies, and they want what was his name, Peter Jackson, the old director from 20 years ago, to film them again. Um, so I guess I just want to ask, how do you feel about
Here's how I
that?
feel about that. There is Tolkien actually did start to write a sequel to the Lord of the Rings. He called it A New Shadow, and it was the whole premise was that Sauron had been so far removed that people forgot why he was evil, or not why he was evil. People forgot his evil, so they started forming cults around him again. And he actually gave up the book because he decided that um, while he meant for the Lord of the Rings to be a kind of nuanced metaphor for whatever the reader sees, it would be patently obvious what the metaphor for a new shadow would be. That if you don't remember your history, you're condemned to repeat it. So that's why he stopped. I really hope it's not an adaptation of that. Actually, I hope they don't make it because Tolkien did not intend for there to be a sequel to The Lord of the Rings. So I think number one priority for all involved parties should be to respect the author and, well, cease production.
Yeah, I know you've read, right, all the Lord of the
Yeah,
Rings books.
fantastic,
Yeah, I've only
fantastic books.
yeah, classics. I've only read The Hobbit, but I've seen the movies.
Yeah, I've read The Lord of
Which
the Rings, The Hobbit, and The Silmarillion.
yeah, yeah. I just searched up. Jamie just pulled that up. Um, that's Joe Rogan's assistant.
We're
And
we're cutting that.
we will, yeah. Um, but I'm reading about it a little bit about it. He wrote 13 pages
Yeah.
apparently.
And well, and here's the thing. I'm sure, as both of us as high school students for the past 3 years, we've both been in the situation where we started writing something and decided it was horrible and scrapped it. Actually, I was in this situation this morning when I was doing an imitation for my AP Lang class with Mrs. McLaughlin. I was writing something. It's supposed to be kind of like a piece, who you are, and I started writing about something. Actually, I was writing about being a student and being a lover of knowledge. Then I realized that the majority of my imitations had kind of revolved around it, and I decided that the idea was getting tired and old, so I pivoted to being a lover of music. But yeah, it's quintessential to writing. You're gonna eventually have to decide how good your ideas are.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Personally, with regarding the Lord of the Rings
Yeah,
movies, I agree with you. I think even, of course, respecting Tolkien's vision of the universe, um, I also feel like it's such a lazy cash grab. You know,
yeah.
it's another movie getting another reboot.
I
Um,
definitely feel that because they recently released the the Amazon series, The Rings of Power. I
yeah,
disliked it because while the Lord of the Rings films and Peter Jackson did a wonderful job when he was directing them. You can find him on record several times saying, um, "We're directing these films, and we don't have a message that we want to get across. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do our damn best so that Tolkien's message gets across through these films, even though it's not an original, it's not the original narrative." That was not what happened with the Rings of Power. The Silmarillion, it's a bit more of very general, I would say, because it covers a lot of history in Tolkien's works. And kind of less metaphorical. You can't see as much metaphor in there with the plot and everything. But the Rings of Power flat out disregarded some of the events and some of the lore behind it. And you can call me a purist for thinking that, but I do think if you're going to do something, some adaptation, you have to at least try to remain as true as possible to the meaning of the author. Because if you don't, you've essentially taken what the author's meant to be one thing and perverted it into something completely different. And I think that's wrong.
Yeah, I get you. So you've watched. I actually haven't heard anything about the Rings of Power after it released. Um, do you want to give a well? I don't know if you want to get into spoilers. Do you want to give like a quick TLDR
Um,
of what you didn't like or what they did?
so like I said, it's not entirely accurate, and I'm sure some people are going to be a lot more upset than I am for that. But at the end of the day, it is a show. They are going to have to change some things to make it flow well. What I didn't like is how cheap it felt. Because some and you can tell it's not a work of passion, not like the Lord of the Rings. Some of the action scenes are just lackluster, and some of the plot devices are tired, old, and cliche. So, and that's why I didn't like it. I'm not going to get into spoilers here.
Okay, yeah, yeah. That was something um, the Lord of the Rings movies are some of my favorite movies of all time, and I was just uh, I was searching them up the other day, and I realized they filmed all three movies like they released them like back to back year after year, and they filmed all the movies together basically,
Yeah,
and that's like a lot. They put a lot of dedication into that work, um, and they had a lot of people on that. I mean, what was it? Even Sir Christopher Lee,
Sir
I think.
Christopher Lee, you had
Yeah,
Ian McKellen, you had Viggo Mortensen, you had Orlando Bloom, you had all sorts of superstars on the cast,
yeah.
and it
And Sir Christopher Lee had even met Tolkien. He was the only guy there who had actually met
yeah.
Tolkien, and I thought, like,
And
that is a such a legendary.
I'm sure that's why Sir Christopher Lee took the part because he wanted to pay homage to Tolkien's work. And I think with the original, they did a fantastic job. They did have to change some things. Some things aren't exact to what happened in the book, but that's to be expected. They did keep the general message. You can still get the there's the same theme of, at least in my opinion, kind of industrialization versus nature, and that's something that you can even find in the soundtrack. There's a piece that plays at the climax called "Nature's Reclamation," and
Oh, yeah,
I think they keep the metaphor that Tolkien was going for, at least in my opinion, very much alive, and that's why I think it's one of the best films, or one of the best film series ever.
yeah. That's actually I've never really thought about. Maybe I've thought about it like subconsciously, but I've never like really scrutinized the meaning of
Do you want me to go
scenes.
into detail with how I perceive the metaphor of the Lord of the Rings, or is that something we should save for some other time?
We could probably save that for another time. I
Alrighty,
think um, there is a 5 minute limit to this, so
alrighty.
um,
Yeah, you're just gonna have to choose the juiciest conversation. So,
yeah.
let's move on to the other topic. See if we can't get anything nicer out of that.
Well, actually, wait. So yeah, this is pretty organic. You mentioned that you're now writing about yourself as like a lover of music.
Yeah, Love music.
What music have you been listening to recently?
Recently, a lot of I think the correct genre would be global music. I've been listening to some traditional Peruvian huaynos. The band I've kind of been obsessed with lately is Los Fabulosos Cadillacs. It's a great band, and actually, I have a very specific album I've been listening to. It's from their farewell tour. It's called Ciao, and yeah, I've just been listening to that a lot recently. That was probably not the answer you were looking for. You were probably looking for something more English, but
I have no idea what I mean. Certainly something I'm not familiar with. What was the band called
Los
again?
Fabulosos Cadillacs.
How do you spell that?
Um,
Los.
Los Fabulosos Cadillacs. So LOS.
Oh, I
Oh
got
yeah,
it.
there you go.
I pulled them up on Spotify.
Yeah. It's their farewell album. It's called Ciao, which fittingly is Spanish for bye. And yeah, I've been listening to it a lot because a lot of those, I don't know. I feel like for most pieces of music, I feel like the studio version is a lot better than live versions.
Yeah.
At least I used to think that way. But the thing you don't get in studio versions that you do get in live versions is passion. Because when the artist is performing live, there very much is an energy that goes about. And as a matter of fact, if you've ever seen or heard of Iron Maiden, their frontman Bruce Dickinson does a fantastic job when it comes to hyping up the crowd and getting them involved. So I do feel I don't know. I used to think that studio versions of songs were better, but now I feel it can go either way. It depends on what the vibe is.
All right. That's an interesting opinion because I've never been to a live concert. Um, so my experience is very limited. But whenever I listen to live albums, I always I'm used to the studio version of it. So when I expect something to happen that's in the studio version and it doesn't in the live, like it's a little change, kind of throws me off, right?
Yeah,
But I guess if you're listening to it, if you're there live, I'm sure it's a whole different feel. You're just having a good time. You're not listening to it just to listen.
yeah. You're kind of listening to, and actually, the one of the things that this group has done that some other groups don't usually do is the studio versions. At least because this is kind of old band, they recorded their tracks in like the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. The live version, which was done like 8 years ago or 2000. Oh yeah, no, it's been done a while ago, like 2009. But the live version, they go all out. They add all sorts of flourishes. I think they even turn a few pieces into orchestral versions or kind of jazz hybrid type things. But yeah, I feel that yeah, like I said, the live version just has more energy than the studio version sometimes.
Yeah. All right. Interesting. Um, all right. Here's a
Yeah,
question. Deeply intense
go ahead.
question. This might determine the future of our society as a whole and everyone's opinion. This is a polarizing topic. Which do you like more, cats or dogs?
That's easy. Dogs. Listen, from an evolutionary point of view, I have more respect for cats because they we may have quote unquote domesticated them, but when you leave a cat alone, you know that thing's gonna be okay.
Yeah,
When you leave a dog alone,
definitely.
you have no idea what's gonna happen. So I like
That's
dogs.
stupid.
And actually, dogs have always been kind of pack animals, so I think that's why they like being in
Yeah.
groups. But I have more kind of respect for cats, just in general.
Hmm. Yeah, I personally, I don't own any animal. I've never had a pet, so I know you have two dogs,
Yeah,
right?
two dogs.
Yeah, two dogs. Um, so obviously, you know, that's your opinion. I've never owned a pet, but everyone on my dad's side of the family owns a dog. Like every single one of my uncles has a dog, except my family, which kind of stinks because I would like to have a pet. But for a while, I was always a dog guy. I was, I loved them. But I gotta say, I started following cat accounts on Twitter.
Really? Hell of a way to get
They
into
post,
cats.
and I'm starting to like cats a lot.
Listen,
I follow.
you know, I thought it was a bad movie. I really didn't like any of the actors or Taylor
Oh yeah,
Swift. And I thought both
yeah.
versions were bad, but yeah.
James Corden in that movie. Oh my god.
I have strong opinions about James Corden. I generally don't like the guy. I think he was kind of funny. He's kind of turned into this. To use the British word for it, he's turned into a prick.
Yeah, definitely. What was it? What was that movie that came out? But he was advertising it like live in LA by dancing on the street with a bunch of other actors. And like there was people going to work that were just super pissed and honking and like I saw the video posted on the internet and it was just so infuriating to watch
You
it.
know, I do think James Corden is the equivalent of a jester. You laugh at him, but not because he's funny, because he's making a fool of himself.
Yeah, it's like slapstick comedy, but kind of worse because you still don't like the guy.
So let's move on to something more hard hitting.
You're right. Recently in the New York Post. No, I'm not gonna.
I
We're not gonna talk about that right now. I don't.
you're
I don't
already
want
gonna
to
have to
talk
cut
about
it
that.
from the intro.
Yeah, yeah, I will. Yeah, you're right. I don't even know why I mentioned. Well, did you mention that?
Moving on.
I don't know. I should wait. Hold on. I want to see if I can pause my recording and see if I actually can hear myself because the sound waves on my microphone are pretty small. Actually, hold on.
I don't know. I have you cranked up to 100% volume, so
All right, listen to it. I can't.
yeah, no, you can't. So no.
All right, listen to
Well,
it.
actually, you have studio monitors, right?
And see if
Well,
I actually can hear myself
let's just
because
finish
the sound waves on my
and then
microphone are
see
pretty. And see if I actually can.
what happened. What happened? That sounds like a horrible idea. Why would you do that? Nah, that sounds reasonable. But anyway, yeah, these were the like two examples of the tracks I was talking about. Both of those are infinitely more passionate than or more energetic than the studio versions, in my opinion. It's a great band, great style of music too. It's a shame they don't make them like that anymore. But anyway, should we move on to a more harder hitting topic once you resume?
Sure. So which of these two?
Which
Do you want to do AI or do you want to do intelligence? Which are both intelligence, but you know,
pick eeny meeny miny mo style. Flip a coin.
we're gonna do a coin flip. Coin flip. Heads is AI, tails is measurement. It's tails. All right, so I was thinking about this.
How do we measure intelligence, right?
Yeah, I was thinking, how do we measure intelligence? Is the question. I was thinking about this after dinner.
You know,
First, what's your take on it? Like, I guess
I feel
that's
I
a
feel
good.
intelligence can't be quantified. At least not in a traditional sense. I mean, think about it. Um, okay, let me just say humans are weird. Humans are pretty much the exception to the rule. No other animal, because that's what we are. At the end of the
Yeah,
day, we are animals. But no other animal
yeah,
well, I wouldn't say perceives itself, but um, no other animal thinks like us. Although if
right.
they maybe they do, and we just don't
Well,
know.
we don't know. Yeah,
But
no other animal has proven that they can think like
we're
us in a way that we would understand.
we're kind of weird because human intelligence can span a wide gamut of things. Because you can be skilled at something, right? That's some manner of
Yeah,
intelligence. You can be quick at learning. That's some measure of intelligence. You can also you can also perceive things about other people. You might be good at logic. You might be good with expressing yourself in art.
yeah.
So
I think emotionally intelligent is something that's often overlooked. Yeah,
emotional intelligence, yeah, I do agree. I think it's underrated. Something I have very little of, just to come clean, but I do think everything's important. The thing is, with all these types of intelligences, the test required to quantify all of it would be massive. Because an intelligence, well, what is an intelligence at the end of the day? An intelligence
we could talk about that for hours. I probably,
is
but
defined as the ability to apply knowledge, to manipulate one's environment, or to think abstractly as measured by objective criteria.
it's a pretty good definition actually. Wow.
That definition
Yeah,
is so vague and so encompassing
it's it's open
that
ended.
we
Yeah,
can we can call pretty much anything intelligence. Can you play an instrument? Well, that's some form of intelligence. Can you do you know how to do you know how to drift a car? That's some manner of intelligence. Can you write code? That's some manner of intelligence. What I'm getting at here is that I think all efforts to quantify intelligence are in vain. They need to be narrowed down. And I think that is possible. Although
yeah,
I don't think because obviously I think the elephant in the room is IQ testing, right? I feel IQ
yes.
testing is ineffectual, at least to get the complete picture. Of course, I say this, and on every IQ test I've taken, I've scored 135 or better. But I feel that it doesn't quite get the complete picture.
Yeah, I was thinking about this myself earlier, and I agree. I feel um, like we're both very academically
I
gifted
wouldn't say that. I just like
students.
to learn.
Yeah, but we get A's in our classes, and
I don't have an A in all my classes.
in you have an A in at least one of your classes.
Right now I have a P in study hall. How
Okay,
troubling.
okay. Study hall does not count. Ryan, we both know we do pretty good in school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, you're always raising your hand and saying things that no one else in the class
Here's
gets.
the thing. That's out of that's out of an earnest desire to learn, and I think that's sometimes
Yeah.
characterized. Well, here I go defending myself, but I think that's sometimes
Hmm.
characterized as, "Ooh, he wants to lord himself over us." I really don't. Sometimes, well, every once in a while I do, just when people get on my nerves. But no, most of those comments are out of a genuine desire to learn more. It's a shame the majority of people I ask um, can't properly respond to those comments. I will say, this morning, I will say
Yeah,
Mr. Hickey did a fantastic job. I threw him a question about the Hall effect, for which for our viewers, the Hall effect is it's effect that occurs with electromagnetic fields at a very small scale. But I threw him a question at the Hall effect just because I was curious, and my uncle and my cousin, who are both nuclear physicists, co-wrote a paper about it. So I was curious, and I was wondering if we were going to learn it. And well, disappointingly, we aren't. But he was able to answer my question completely, and he was able to address everything I was curious about. And I feel in doing that, he essentially I got what I wanted to get out of it.
yeah,
And I feel like
yeah. It was a very
some teachers don't do this. I'm not gonna say any
yeah.
Oscar. Um, I feel like some people don't do that, and I feel like some teachers take it completely the wrong way and think I'm trying to be a smartass. And it might seem that way. I'm not, but of course, anyone could easily interpret this as me covering my ass and defending myself. But that's what I perceive.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, you've already learned these things. It seems so. You want to learn something new, something that you don't, or something that's more advanced that you would be very interesting for you. But unfortunately, it seems a lot of classes uh, cater towards students that don't quite know as much, and so we have to go over the things that we already do know, or you already do know.
Yeah, and I will say that is a problem with some classes. By definition, a school, it's not like the days of old when you could go to the forum and get a tutor to teach you all sorts of stuff. By definition, big classes, or reasonably big classes, have to cater to the lowest common denominator. And those are people who aren't going to obviously quite get it. And that's not to say those people have lower intelligence, to try to get us back on topic. That's they might have different intelligence. They might perceive the world differently as a result.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. That a lot of people, whenever you get A's and you understand things in school, it's like, oh, you're so smart. But I really don't feel particularly more intelligent than somebody. Like, I don't think I'm very socially intelligent.
Ah, yes.
In a lot of cases, the classic computer nerd isn't very good in social situations. Who would have guessed? Who would have guessed? But there's there is an intelligence in thousands of different fields, and I like to think um, that everyone has an equal level of intelligence, but in different areas.
Yeah.
Now, whether that's actually true or not is beyond me, but it doesn't really matter because it because I also think the entire idea of measuring intelligence. I mean, we've taken Apush. We know about phrenology and how that was used,
Mm-hmm.
racism and things like that. Um, and intelligence is it's such a sticky thing because if you're just not as if you say you're not as intelligent as someone, how are you going to
What
go
does that
through
even
that?
mean?
It what does it mean exactly? So there really is putting an IQ number to it really doesn't do it justice. Like the ability to learn something, given enough time, anybody could learn anything. I think
Mm-hmm.
so. Those are my thoughts on it.
Yeah. To put it in a sports analogy, gaining knowledge, because you can consider knowledge some form of intelligence. Gaining knowledge is like training for cross country. You're gonna suck at first. Yeah, and you're gonna have to keep doing it every day, whether you like it or not. But once you get past over the hill, once you're comfortable and you can run for longer and faster, things become easier. It's there's actually a very specific name for this. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. Um,
Oh, I've heard of that.
and actually, I think was it with Stella I talked about it? I don't know. Well,
I
let
think
me
it
throw
was.
in
Yeah.
a chat so you can see it's. And actually, funnily enough, this is extremely common amongst programmers who think they're to put it colloquially, the shit.
They're the
They're the
stuff.
shit, yeah. But yeah. And actually, I think wisdom, which is not yet another form of intelligence, wisdom, at least in my opinion, is the being able to perceive the world in for what it is. Um, if you're wise, then I think you will definitely be able to tell when you know nothing. Definitely be able to tell when you know a lot, but there's still a lot to learn. And actually, I will say if you're really wise, you will never be satisfied because there is always a little bit more to learn.
Yeah. It's sort of like Socratic in that you know anyone anyone can learn anything if their mind's opened, and that it's like what who said it? That it's like the more I learn, the less I know.
Yeah, that's a fantastic quote, and I think that illustrates the Dunning-Kruger effect perfectly.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, to be honest, I feel like knowledge. I'm sure you're familiar with Sisyphus, the man who was cursed
Yes.
to roll a boulder up a hill, only for it to roll down once it reaches the top. Feel like
Eternity.
learning is kind of like that. You might learn a lot, and you'll get to the top of like what you're learning of. And then you'll look up, and you realize you still have further to go.
Exactly. Yeah. I think to I know I've been talking a lot about this guy lately, but one of my programming heroes, John Carmack, um, he so I'm reading this book called Masters of Doom, which is about the founders of id Software, John Romero and John Carmack, and how they made a game and basically a whole genre and pop culture movement. Um, and John Carmack was he was the main engine developer of the game, so he had to make all like the physics, and this is more so. I know you gotta get this stuff, but for the audience, he had to make like all the physics and how the textures were processed and all the graphics and
And I might add,
all the background
he had
stuff.
to do this back when computers had the equivalent processing power of a potato.
Exactly. He had to optimize the crap out of his game so that it would run fast on the terrible hardware. And he was a legendary programmer at the time because he still is. I shouldn't say at the time, but he had to implement all these different things, different innovations in computing that would make his ultimate product just a better graphics engine, a better game engine. And he pushed the boundaries back in the 90s, early 90s to the 2000s, and now he's working with Oculus. I think he's pushing VR technology still. There's still so much more there.
Actually, he recently severed ties with them.
Oh, did he?
It was either him
Cut
or
off.
John Romero. One of those two severed ties with Oculus, I think, to my knowledge.
I
It
know
might be,
he was working with Oculus. I don't think Romero was. Um, oh yeah. I think I see this now.
but so where are you going with this?
Yeah. Um, hmm. How do we even get here?
Well, we talked
John
about the
Romero.
Dunning-Kruger. I think the point you were trying to
Yeah.
make is that even though he did all this great stuff,
He's
he was,
he's still learning and innovating.
yeah. So I guess at least when it comes to knowledge, you will never be knowledgeable. At least truly knowledgeable. You will never be omniscient. And I think that's part of the fun of it.
Because knowledge is infinite, I guess you could say. As far as we, yeah. One thing I like to think is that, like, I like to think of why do we need people with certain jobs? And it's because people are, you could be a doctor yourself and you would never have to go to the hospital, but you'd have to get all that work to be a doctor. And so no one will ever really have all the knowledge in the world because there's just so much of it, and it takes two time. We only have so much time, and so I think whatever knowledge you're interested in, that's the knowledge worth exploring. But holy cows, there are a lot of knowledge.
Yeah. So, all right then, let's pivot. This is our last topic. Actually, I do kind of want to talk about a bit about philosophy because I'm curious about what your beliefs to how to live a good life are. But this, so AI and deepfake technology.
So, obviously, we've seen a lot of it on the internet recently. And a lot of it is really funny stuff.
Mm-hmm.
People are using it. It's actually almost incredible that as soon as this technology is made public, people are immediately using it to make funny videos and take celebrities and famous people that they may like or dislike and just make them say the most ridiculous things.
Oh yeah.
I think there's something weird about human. I don't know if it's internet human nature. I don't know what it is, but people love that stuff. But outside of the whole entertainment aspect of how ridiculous that stuff is, I think I've yet to see many meaningful examples of like deep fake videos and voice used on like politicians to try and make it sound try it and make older folk think some Joe Biden said something absolutely insane. I've yet to see a lot of that, or much at all, really.
I will say it probably isn't going to work much with the younger generation. But with the older generation, they aren't going to pick up on because obviously we can tell it's fake because the voice has a certain tick. There's intonation where there shouldn't be, and and the robots have different tone like that. So you can us young folk can obviously pick up, and any reasonably any reasonable person who's been around the block can pick it up. Um,
Yeah,
but if you're an older folk and you kind of have a bit more trust in technology, you're not going to pick it up. You're going to believe every
I
word
was
that's coming out of the deepfake. And actually, deepfakes have gotten so good that it's feasible now to deepfake the voice and also deepfake the actual video.
the
Yeah,
video.
it's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
I'm honestly, when you started talking about it, I was thinking about my grandparents. I have like 80-year-old grandparents on my mom's side. I have, I hate to say it, but I could imagine them falling for that kind of stuff, where they see a video of Joe Biden like declaring war on Russia, and they're like, "Did you see Joe Biden declared war?" And I have to talk to them and say, "No, that's fake technology." And my grandpa's gonna be like, look how smart these people have gotten. Like look how far things have come. But like that is a significant voter base of our country.
The old folk,
Is
yeah. One thing,
senior citizens.
and not to get, I guess we can get political maybe some other time, but I do think that the old guard, as I'll call them, the old vote, kind of messing things up for us younger folk because they have obviously been, and actually this is all subjective. What is good, what is not, what is moral, what is not. I'll just say that because of differing opinions, it results that they're trying to steer the country one way, and the new crowd, for better or for worse, is trying to steer the country another way. And I see this AI technology only exacerbating that.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I think about, I kind of had this epiphany, is that like conservative and liberal politics are kind of like a yin and a yang, yin yang, not yin and yang. Um, is that like I think the country, I think society as a whole should continue moving generally in a more liberal direction.
Is that progress?
But for a lack, if there was zero conservative pushback to that, I think it would end in catastrophe because I think there'd be too much movement. I think conservatism delays that movement, slows it down, makes it acceptable for society to adapt, and that liberalism is what pushes it forward. Because it's taken hundreds of years for things to happen. Like literally, America ended slavery after arguing over it for 100 years, and then 100 years later, they finally totally secured African Americans the right to vote.
Mm-hmm.
And that those things take a while, but it's something we would now agree is unequivocally a good thing. Um, I mean, obviously, you could say there's subjectivism in what's good and bad, but let's be honest here. No one's going to go around saying that slavery was a good thing. No one's going to say that. Um,
Yeah, obviously.
but it's taken a while for that to happen, and that's probably just because society couldn't adapt that fast. We had to have that conservatism. Obviously, now it's like, the liberalism of 1865 is just modern day, but it acts like a filter, and I think that this is more about politics than AI now.
Yes, and I find that hilarious, but
But hey, this is how conversations happen, I guess, is that you go from one topic to the other. And I've thought about this a good bit.
we could have a whole conversation about conversations.
We could. We could. We've been, you know, we've been recording for 41 minutes.
Let's
We could.
let's finish this AI topic or wherever we're going with it, and then if you want, we can get started on the final topic, the one I'm most interested in, or we can just call it a night.
We could get into that, but yeah, like I could pull it back, but that political divide, I definitely think that this everyone says this technology is only going to get more advanced. It's going to get more potential for harm, um, and frankly, I think our government has already had a lack of regulation regarding the internet for far too
I
long.
think it's our last major piece of legislation for the internet comes in the 90s, and the internet was a footnote in that bill, to my knowledge. So I do think that we're going to have to regulate the internet. I do, and well, yeah, you've caught me wide in the open here. I'm preaching the gospel of a tax and spend liberal, but I do think that regulation, and as Joe Biden recently mentioned in his State of the Union, I do think that regulation is necessary because capitalism without competition is exploitation. So, and to be honest,
Yeah,
for this capitalism with competition to work, the competition needs to be fair. The playing field needs to be level. So, I I do
exactly.
think that regulation needs to come. It's a shame
Yeah,
that lots of our politicians are septuagenarians or octogenarians who have never personally touched the internet. I bet many of
yeah.
those people don't know what an Instagram is.
It's probably just a job description, Instagram manager.
Mm-hmm.
For, um, yeah, no, that there's so many aspects of the internet that have just are completely free, open. just open to interpretation and regulation of companies by themselves, and that I don't think it's working. And we're learning in our AP Computer Science Principles class about the use of privacy and data.
Ah, yes. I'm
And
sure I've made my stance very clear as to where I lie there. I, I,
but there's
I have a, well, I guess you could call it distrust. I generally don't trust people I don't see or meet. And maybe once you've talked to a person, you can gauge their character. But if you don't know a person, their intentions could be many, and not all of them good.
yeah,
But that's just my little tidbit on that.
yeah. Oh my god, my printer's going off again. That really distracted me from. I just had a really good, interesting thought. Um, you were talking about. What was it? Oh my god, that threw me so hard.
Mm, well,
What were you just saying?
yeah, I have a deep-seated, well, not deep-seated,
Oh yeah, yeah. Privacy and
distrust
justice.
of people. Because, listen, I like people. As a matter of fact, I love people. The thing is, when you don't know them, and when they don't know you, because there's an aphorism, there's a saying that it's hard to hate people close up. Likewise, it's hard to exploit people when you know them. When you don't know them, when they're just a statistic, it sure is easy to ignore. Actually, I think that's one of the reasons many Americans still willingly eat Nestle, despite their history of human rights abuses. Who cares about a poor child dying in Africa when you can enjoy these delicious Reese's cups?
Yeah. No, that's definitely true. Something that um, I know I've experienced is that like it sounds kind of silly in the total grand scheme of it, but like talking to people on Snapchat, some of these like if you add people on Snapchat, some of them times they'll like snap you, and I think to myself, I have no idea who this person is. I know they're a teenager. I know they know a friend of mine, and that's how they've somehow added me. But I actually have no idea who this person is. I will probably never meet this person in my life. And I just, that personally for me, I see no value in even engaging in like the stupid socialness of Snapchat with a person that I've never met before and never will meet.
Yeah, I
Um,
feel
and I
I
think,
do feel social media has been detrimental, but yeah, continue.
yeah, yeah, I think that that sort of, it's not like a distrust, but it is sort of, there, I guess there is something there. I'm very private about my private
Yeah,
information,
that hence the name.
hence the name, yeah. So I totally agree. When I like to, I prefer people that I know and have talked to have, for me to tell them my private information. I don't, yeah. And one thing about private information is that, like, the voice technology, you can, your phone will pick up your voice, and your voice now with AI can be used to make recordings of you that don't
I find
exist.
it quite humorous, and actually, um, well, first let me finish. I find it quite humorous that about 70 years ago, 60 years ago, people were worried about Soviet wiretaps in their house. And nowadays, with Alexa or an Apple HomePod, people are asking the wiretaps for recipes or what the weather is today.
Exactly.
Hey, wiretap, can you explain what the stock market is doing? Sure thing. But yeah, I do find it kind of ironic that privacy has been disregarded. Or at least it has gotten to the point where convenience to some folks is more important than privacy. What will it take to
It
steer
was,
them in the other direction? Um,
I don't know.
shock, in my opinion. actually. It's the reason I don't have a Google account for my personal email anymore, because I discovered that they had, without consent of mine, at least any, without being upfront about it, they had recorded my voice and tied it to geolocation data on Google Maps. They had recorded my voice while I was using Google Maps. I did not consent to this, by the way. And they had tied my voice down talking about various things in various places. And according to the terms of service, they were selling that data to third parties. And
Who are these third parties? No one
I'm
knows.
sure it's very easy to see why a third party would be interested in knowing that Mariano Rodriguez at 3 p.m., or not at 3 p.m., at 4 p.m. on a Sunday is hungry and wants something to eat. But yeah,
Yeah,
don't it?
that it's scary stuff. Yeah, I don't like it.
So anyway, I do want to move on to a final topic.
Final
And
topic.
this is just something I shoehorned in here because I want to get you on the record for this. I'm kind of curious. Do you have any philosophy for living?
Philosophy for
Yeah,
living.
philosophy. Are you into philosophy, or do you have some kind of central
There's
values that guide your life?
there's a couple things I've seen. I haven't read any real books on philosophy.
It can be some
About it.
ad hoc type thing you just came up with yourself.
Um, so one of the things I think of, there's really two things. I'm going to get into one of them first. Is you kind of got me into this is the idea of stoicism, um, and a lot of the time I like to think of that as staying in your own lane, um, which there's elements of that in stoicism, and I'm sure that's obviously a simplification of it. But I like to think of the idea of just staying in your own lane. Um, Being a high school student, I often, see people talking about like gossip and stuff and who's dating what and who cheated on who.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I cheated on 16 women this week.
Classic Mariano. Uh, but I just cannot get interested in that. I think I feel like if I were to interest like try and understand it, I feel like I would inadvertently become a part of it, and I think that would have a negative effect on my life. Because I don't want people talking about me behind my back, which is going to happen. But I don't want people talking about like my relationships or something or lack thereof. Um, so that's sort of one thing. And also, I've heard this term called absurdism, where
Absurdism.
uh, it's kind of where like it's more about the meaning of life and where you kind of accept there's no meaning to life, and that's kind of cool.
So you are content with so this is very much the opposite of nihilism, where there is no meaning, and because of that, we're all doomed. Um, so yeah, so what you're saying is you take it upon yourself to make a meaning in this meaningless life.
Yeah, sorry, my mom was in the room for just a second. I didn't want to talk about my life philosophy
I'm
while
sure
she
your mother
was
would
getting
be
the
a
room.
very big fan of uh, whatever the Bible says.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? Um, but yeah, so um, I like nihilism and stuff like that. How it's like there is no meaning. Like, do you know that the people on the bus meme where there's like one guy in the bus and he's looking at the wall and he's all sad. The other guy's looking at it and he's happy and he's like looking out the window.
Yeah. One is sad he's on the bus. He doesn't want to be there. He wants to get to the destination, get it over. The other one is enjoying the ride. So I think you are very good.
Ni-
I think that is a very good analogy.
yeah, nihilism is the I'm on the bus sad.
Yeah.
Absurdism is I'm on the bus happy. Um, and that whole idea that like there's no why do we live? Does it really matter? I don't think it really does. Do we have to have a reason to live? I think we make
So
our
would
own.
you say your two philosophies, your two I'm not sure how close to your heart you hold these philosophies. Would you say they intermingle sometimes? Would you say they conflict?
I don't think they conflict too much. I mean, the idea of wanting to stay in my lane and um, I tend to whenever if someone were to tell me something personal and someone else wanted to know it, um, if they expressly told me not to tell someone, I just say, hey, I'm not going to tell you, dude. That kind of thing of like I'm just going to stay out of things, not take sides on things that don't matter. That I don't think it really interferes with my idea that life is just how I want to live it.
All right then.
In fact, it probably reinforces it.
So I guess it's my turn to talk about this.
What are your philosophies?
I think I think you, I think you mentioned this earlier. I am unapologetically a Stoic. I am a practitioner of Stoicism. So obviously that means I hold the four Stoic virtues: wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice, extremely close to my heart. And obviously I try to remember every day. There's a Stoic aphorism. It's called memento mori, and it's Latin for "remember you will die." And actually,
Yes, I've heard
there's the
that.
quote from Marcus Aurelius, who was a great Stoic philosopher. Oh, I feel like a missionary knocking at the door, trying to convert someone. But there is a quote from Marcus Aurelius where he says, "It's in effect," he says, "You were doomed to die the day you were born. You have a terminal illness called life. You are dead. Now go live a good life." And I think that's all what Stoicism is about. It's about living a good life because you only get one of them. And well, I think living the four tenets kind of guide you toward a good life. Obviously, you have being having wisdom, being able to know what you can do, what is in your control. Because obviously, some things are out of your control, and no matter how hard you try, you can't change them. For example, I could get extremely mad that I am kind of short. Actually, I'm barely above average. But I can't control that, so why bother? It is but a fact of my own life. So I have to accept it.
Yeah,
With temperance, obviously, if some things like like drugs and alcohol, kind of on the side of excess. It's kind of trying to indulge, and some things like not having a lot, like purposely living a Spartan life, is the other side. And I think temperance is doing just what is essential. Not so much that you are drowning in ecstasy, not so little that you are in basically in poverty. Enough that you can live. And actually, there's a good quote by Epictetus where he says he's yet another Stoic philosopher, but he says, "Curb your desire. Don't set your heart on so many things, and you will get what you need." So live life with what is essential. The third one is courage. I think that speaks to itself. You have to you have to stand up for what is correct, what is just.
yeah,
Even if that means fighting the status quo. even if it is futile, you cannot let you cannot let some kind of injustice to pursue without at least trying to change things. And that goes back to wisdom. If you can change things,
yeah,
by all means try. And if there is the slightest chance, then try anyway. And the final one is justice. Obviously, live a just life. Do no harm to others. Do no harm to the earth. Don't steal. Um, and there's a good quote by Cicero. I'm quoting so many people, but men were brought into being for the sake of men, that they might do good to one another. So be good to your fellow men, basically. Don't allow yourself to be.
yeah,
And it goes back to, it kind of loops back to temperance. Don't let yourself be consumed by hubris or anger or anything that might make you act unreasonable. Just be. But yeah, I think these four virtues let you live a happy, free, and simple life.
hmm. Yeah. I think I see that. I totally get that. Um,
Am I finally
when you
getting
mentioned,
through?
when you mentioned that, what was it, the Marcus Aurelius quote? That was totally just like sort of what I was thinking with when I mentioned absurdism. Is that like there's no, you know, death is inevitable, and so just do with it what you can. Um, do with life what you can. Yeah. Um, wow.
So yeah, do you
Also,
go ahead? Go ahead.
uh, in our class actually for AP English language, um, we were actually taking a look at some philosophies. So it's actually quite nice that you mentioned
Was
this.
one of them hedonism?
We did not look at hedonism. Isn't that
The
sort of
pursuit of happiness at all
physical
costs.
pleasures?
It goes
Yeah,
directly against Stoicism, with specifically temperance. If you pursue happiness at all
yeah,
costs, if you go for excess instead of the essential, you're not going to be satisfied.
yeah. Well, we did not look at hedonism. We were looking at transcendentalism, specifically Henry David
So
Thoreau,
nature
and
and the individual.
nature. Yeah, something he said was to live deliberately.
Fantastic. That was a fantastic passage. I know where that comes from. I read it. I did really like that.
Yeah, I think.
So where are you
Uh,
going with this? Live deliberately.
hmm. Well, I guess it's really from all the ideas that I have looked at and that I'm aware of. I feel like it all points to the idea that people should just live life as they feel will fulfill them in a I can't say just fulfill them because obviously we're talking about temperance and hedonism, but and you could say that
In
fulfills
a
them
meaningful sentiment.
in a meaningful way, in a meaningful, deliberate way. Um,
I do think that is important. Kind of that it obviously, if you hedonism is, like I said, it goes against the temperance. But actually, I don't know where I'm going with this.
yeah, I don't know either. I'm not. I kind of got lost in my thoughts.
Then that's the kind of thinking provoked by these kinds of topics. So
Yeah,
anyway,
I had a second point I wanted to make when you were talking about when you finished your when when you said what you said, but then I forgot it when I talked about Thoreau. Um, hey, you know what? You know what? Is a little. There was a game I was playing a couple months
Really?
ago, maybe last month, um, and it actually had a. There was a secret level, um, and it had a lot about philosophy in it. The game is called Ultra Kill, and
Shocking.
in one of the in one of the secret levels, this is batshit insane to say, but it's the secret levels are based off just random genres of video games. Even though the game's a first-person shooter, the secret levels are just other genres, and this secret level is based off of dating simulators. And you're talking with some other character in the game, and they're telling you how meaningless life is, and all the color starts to fade from the screen, and they're going on and on about the futility of it all. And then at one point, you don't even get like, there's no text option for you. You just tell them, no, you're wrong. And then your character goes on and talks about all the way that we humans and people make meaning in life, um, when there is none. And that's the point of it all. Um, and when I was playing through that level and I saw that, I was like, wow, that hits home.
Yeah. Uh, I think actually there's like I said, Stoicism has always favored the simple, and I think part of being wise is being able to appreciate what you have. Because, well, like I said earlier, remember that you will die, but also remember that even though death is far away, you have no idea what the future holds. So
Mm-hmm.
be content with what you have. Obviously, if you and actually that's a bit of my sports philosophy, so I'm not going to bring that in here. But yeah, be content with what you have.
Yeah.
Obviously, strive to be better. Strive to be a better person always. But be content with what you have. And actually, there's a great Stoic there's a great story about the Stoic philosopher Chrysippus, I believe, and he was a Stoic philosopher. He was also an athlete. So, and actually, not just any athlete. He was a cross country runner. So
Oh,
very very comparable
fitting.
to what happened to me. But the way he died is he he was getting kind of old, and actually he had been suffering from heart problems. So he was sitting down on the stoop, and then he saw a donkey choke on a fig,
I know
and
this
he
now.
started laughing, and he laughed so much he died. And I think it's fitting as a stoic that in his final moments he had simply been enjoying the spectacle of a donkey. He was
He did.
appreciating what had what he had around him, and even though he died instance later, he still appreciated every last second of his death through laughter. And I'm sure that is a very hell of a
Yeah.
way to die, but I do think that it's a very meaningful way to die, appreciating what you do have. And actually, if you think about it, isn't that not the way everyone wants to die? Surrounded by family, friends, and just a sigh, a last breath, content with the life you've lived, appreciating what you've had. But yeah, I do think that is the pinnacle of stoicism in many ways.
I concur. Uh, well,
I feel like we've run out of momentum, so
yeah. You want to wrap it up? I have no idea what else to talk about. I'm certainly. I don't think we have to talk about the link I posted.
the man who is sexually attracted to airplanes.
I will say though, when I read a little bit of the article, I
If you,
felt a little bad about it because I did realize towards the end of the article it says that like this sort of sexuality thing is often a symptom of autism. And when I read that, I was kind of like, you know, maybe I just don't understand it.
I'm sure
You know,
you don't. I'm sure it's like abstract art to you. You can never truly appreciate it. But
I may never get it.
anyway, folks,
Yeah,
that's all we have for you tonight. I'm
that's
glad you've joined us for this shockingly long podcast. I'm sure editor Dave will have a lot of work to do, cutting this down
Jesus
to a
Christ.
5-minute segment where we talk about, where we make meaningful conversation and maybe a bit of playful banter. But yeah, that's all we have for you tonight.
Yeah, we. This has been for an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah. Anyway, cut the recording.
Yeah. All
How
right.
do you feel that went? Just post show debrief. How do you feel? Do you think we could have done better?